right, hey folks, thanks for coming to another Ape into Arbitrum event. I am just having my typical trouble getting my speaker onto stage. So Darius from Vertex should be joining us. Darius, if you can hear me, you might leave and there it is, it's connecting. You made it. Do you want to unmute and test?
I'm here, dude. Sorry, I'm technically incompetent, but I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Very good, and don't worry. Twitter Spaces is one of the most technically complicated things that happens in blockchain. So it's forgivable. Um, well, thanks for coming on. Would love to just learn everything we can about Vertex. Just so you know, I know you'd worked with Amanda. My name's Clayton. Amanda's in Korea, and it's like 4 a.m, so I volunteered to join today. And Vertex is building the kind of stuff in DeFi that I'm particularly excited about. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
That was my absolute pleasure, Clayton. Thanks for having me.
So why don't we just start out with like the basic introduction then of what is Vertex?
Yeah, sure. So Vertex is a non-custodial exchange, and our aim is we fulfill all your trading needs. So perps, spot, money market, borrow lending stuff, AMMs, everything you want to do as pertains to trading, you should be able to come to Vertex with your wallet, plug in, and trade.
So you're all of DeFi.
Yeah, when you say it like that,
That's an
sounds very ambitious.
ambitious scope.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is like when you look at most DeFi exchanges, they're very siloed. So you go to Uniswap, you can literally just do market orders on tokens. You go to Aave, you can do some borrowing and lending. You go to DYDX, you can trade perps or perpetual protocol or wherever, right? The problem is like most users and centralized exchanges lead the way on this in terms of UX, mostly because they've been around a lot longer and the technology is kind of easier to put together and understand. But most users, what they want is they want to go to one place, deposit some cash, trade some assets, play around with some perps, do whatever, but they just want to do that in one place. And so our thinking was, like, could we build something that fulfilled those needs that people have with centralized exchanges, but actually keep to a more what we call sort of an authentic crypto ethos? So be self-custodial, be open source, have everything clear on chain so you can make sure that you know what your assets are. And, like, look at all the problems that there have been in the last few months. That argument has kind of been made for us. So, like, problems with BUSD at Binance. Before that, problems at FTX. And before that, all the other centralized entity blowups that have happened in the last year. It's just been a mess. And it's all been
Yep,
because people haven't been custodying their own assets.
absolutely, absolutely. And well, that's very cool. Yeah, and so it does sound ambitious, but also yeah, basically kind of necessary because I think you're absolutely right about wanting to keep it in one spot. And then I'm imagining that you would support like, well, basically, if everything's in one place, you can use your collateral a lot more flexibly than you might be able to by combining different protocols, right? Like it's just a lot more
Yeah,
efficient in that way.
that's exactly right. So you're doing a great job of selling it for us. Great segue. So yeah, I mean, the idea is like you should be able to come to us, deposit tokens. Those tokens should be used as collateral. You can trade them on our spot market, um, but then also you can use them as collateral for trading other things on margin. And so it just means that your whole portfolio becomes way more efficient and easier to risk manage. Like at the moment, um, I hate to speak ill of the dead, but FTX was in many ways very successful because they had a great product that did some of the things I'm describing. And really that was because people wanted it. They wanted somewhere you could have flexible use of collateral, flexible markets to trade on, and they wanted a fast kind of fluid experience. And we think we can do that, but do it the right way on chain.
Very good. Well, I certainly support that ethos. So one of the things that was explained to me, or that I saw while looking about Vertex information, was this idea of an order book AMA hybrid market design. You want to maybe tell us what that is?
Yeah. So the whole idea so the whole idea is basically, in many ways, Vertex is quite a conventional DEX. So all our contracts are on chain. We have an AMM for spot. We will have a VAMM for perps. You can deposit your assets, and then that liquidity can be traded against by other users. But what we've added over the top is we have a sequencer for our contract. So everything clears onto Arbitrum. Our sequencer's non-custodial, literally just accepts signed transactions from users' wallet and forwards them onto the chain. But what we're able to do then is to run a order book over the top of the AMM. So it means market makers can provide very good liquidity on the order book, but it means that users can also provide liquidity through the AMM. And without going into too much detail, what happens is when you execute an order, you get the best liquidity from the AMM and the order book simultaneously. So whatever is the best fill for you, you'll get filled at that price optimally when you trade.
So that to me sounds like a similar version of like the whole premise of an AMM alongside order book or platforms is that when there's a price discrepancy, someone will arbitrage it, right?
Yeah.
And so it almost sounds like you're doing sort of a similar thing, except instead of needing an arbitrager, it's on the same platform. So you would just give the purchaser the best price on both order books, right? Sorry, on both exchanges.
Yeah, exactly. It has that outcome. It also means, like, you can leave limit orders, will ultimately add stop losses. So it means that as a user, you will have ultimately you can flexibly interact with liquidity in whatever way suits you best. Because at the moment, like, most DEXs ask you to compromise. When you execute against an XYK pool, you are going to have nasty slippage if you try and do any significant size. And it becomes the work for like quite high level expertise to avoid that. With us, you can literally just put a limit order in, and that limit order will get filled against market maker liquidity. And they arbitrage against your limit order, but you're in control rather than on an XYK pool where you're very vulnerable to things like MEV.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I accidentally left my slippage tolerance really high because I was buying some thin liquidity token. And then I did a large trade on Uniswap with the 5% slippage setting, and I got front run.
Yeah.
My once.
One
of those, like, yeah.
I had a similar experience today. I had a token. Yeah, I like the project. I've been farming something. I was, we rallied, so I was going to sell some tokens. And I just put it into an aggregator. And it's only because I stopped myself and I checked again, I realized I think the slippage on it was 25%. And so I've heard a lot and seen lots of these things, and yeah, it's not great as a user experience, which is why we wanted to do things this way.
Brilliant. So tell me a little bit about, so you talked about kind of the stacking of all these different functions and financial products that users want
Yeah.
in one place. From just like the user interface and UX perspective, centralized exchanges tend to offer seemingly a much more fluid experience. And so I'm kind of curious if you kind of expect to adopt that look and flow, or will that be a kind of a hybrid, or how are you approaching kind of the UI side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go to our testnet app at vertexprotocol.com, there you go. I'll do some light shilling as we go. You can see on the testnet, like, the look and feel is way more oriented towards a centralized exchange type of experience than it is to, say, a traditional DEX like Curve or something. And part of that was just, well, a huge part of that really was user feedback. Like, as soon as we went to anyone and started asking them what they wanted and what they wanted from a trading experience, very few people pointed towards a out and out DEX. Most users pointed us to, Binance, DEXs was. There are a few notable DEXs. Like, I think for their product, although our product's very different, I think GMX have done a good job of giving people a very simple user experience that they understand and they like using. As I said, it's a narrow offering, but what it offers, people like, so that's good. I think DYDX did a great job with their UX. So there are good examples in the decentralized space, and I think more and more people are focusing on UX, and that's great to see. So we sort of take inspiration from some of our colleagues in the space and trying to add a little bit of our own spice, and we hope users are going to like it.
Nice. That sounds ideal. And you're right. As far as DYDX and GMX experiences, is definitely different generation than kind of the beginning of the DeFi summer period or something.
Yeah. That makes sense, right? It's like,
So
if you're old and you remember the internet from the 1990s, like, those initial websites look terrible, right? And then look at what we have now. I think, we're going through a similar thing in Web3. We'll get there.
Of course. So you mentioned that there's the test net. So when do you expect mainnet to be out, and what will that launch look like?
Yeah, so we're literally in the sort of final phases of throwing together all the tech for mainnet. So, like, we've been through audit with all our contracts, but a lot of the tech stack needs sort of robust testing. So obviously we have this sequencer, and the main thing with that is for it to be reliable and that it does the right thing, and we make sure that there are no bugs or glitches. So we're spending a lot of time testing that and going back and forth. That's going pretty well, but as soon as those bugs are all ironed out, it's kind of hard to estimate. We'll sort of enter launch phase. So my expectation is, as far as most users are concerned, they're going to see a front end operational for Vertex in the next, let's say, 2 months. I'd push it might be 3, but how the debugging goes in the next few weeks kind of dictates how the next 2 months go.
That makes sense. And do you have your targets set on being multi-chain, or do you intend to live on Arbitrum?
So I think our intention is always that Arbitrum will operate as a settlement layer for us. I think, in my mind, the long-term vision for Vertex would be that we have some kind of cross-chain functionality via some sort of interchain messaging system, just something like
Mm-hmm.
0x or Wormhole or whatever, and that we use that as a method for bringing in assets from other ecosystems. We trade them, we clear the risk on Arbitrum, and then ultimately when people want to withdraw to a native chain, we do that through a messaging protocol, and then the assets released natively on the chain at the other end.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That you intend to be sort of Arbitrum based. It's just, to me, it's sort of a reflection of the maturity of Arbitrum and maybe L2s generally, that it's no longer the case of, existing mainnet projects just creating franchises over on the other chains. It's, actual projects like this that are really DeFi oriented, starting and living on the rollups. I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think like for us, if you look at apps that have just forked and published themselves on different chains, the problem is you just disaggregate all your liquidity. I think a big thing for us is we want to provide really good liquidity for users. So it's kind of essential that all the risk clears on one native chain. And for us, that sort of book of record is Arbitrum.
Yep. Totally makes sense. So for the sake of our listeners and the across community, what are kind of the opportunities that might exist in the future for people to look out for? Maybe you're planning to run some sort of liquidity mining program, or maybe people should be tinkering around with things because you never know what happens in the future, or just anything that you can share.
So yes, I get your coded question. When token?
Well done.
When token? I broke your code. So I don't think we've made any like real secret of it. We will have a token. The focus of the token is governance. There will be some fees redirected through the token for those that are doing various forms of staking, and some of that's in our white paper, which some of the details may change as we go forward and implement that part of the program, but this broadly tells you our thinking. I think the way we're going to do it, this isn't fully public, it's kind of semi-public, so a little bit of alpha for your users. Our main thing is to just drive adoption of the platform, right? And that for us means liquidity, and it means trading. And so the first roughly 6 months of Vertex, we will allocate token emissions according to trading activity, and we'll release more details of this in the next month or so, maybe 2 months, depending on exactly when we decide to communicate. But essentially what it'll be is you come in, you trade, and at the 6-month point we'll do an airdrop, and that airdrop will go to the biggest users of Vertex. They'll get a significant amount. Well, every user of Vertex, but obviously the more you use, the more you get. And our hope is that by distributing governance immediately in that fashion, we get the people that have been most invested early, get a decent slug of tokens. If you're just farming, you get to pass those into stronger hands. If you want to own a piece of what we're doing going forward, you keep it.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that is actually very clear. You're not playing any secrets there with the plan forward, and that's something we experimented with across. Essentially the same framework where like, hey, you're going to get something for this, so you're mining tokens, but there's not like a live APY.
Yeah. I think
like, 1inch did the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's like, I know why people like APYs. You get that little dopamine hit of you see the value and ticks up and blah blah blah. But I think like for us, and I probably drove a fair amount of this. Like I genuinely believe in decentralizing, and like I know people want to make money, and yeah, there's an opportunity there as well. But like my hope is, with all the things and all the works we've done on tokenomics, all the work we've done on the platform, how we're aligning interests with market makers, users, like you're not gonna want to sell this thing. This shit is gonna go. Number is gonna go up. You are not gonna want to fuck around. Be involved with Vertex, contribute to the community, give back, get tokens. You will do okay.
All right. I think that's a pretty good time for us to go towards wrapping and try to keep these tight. But that's, you know, that was a pretty inspiring sort of self endorsement, I would say, of what you're building. It's cool.
Perfect. Thanks, Clayton. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, it was really a pleasure having you on, Darius.
Right.
And hopefully we can work together in the future as well.
Thank you very much. I'd like that very much. You got a good turnout as well. Thanks to everyone for coming and listening to me ramble on with Clayton. If you've got any follow-up questions or whatever, feel free to ping us on the Vertex channel or ping me directly on Twitter. I'm happy to communicate with people.
Brilliant. And should I assume that Discord would be the kind of central community location?
That is correct. I'm not as active in Discord as maybe I could be, but we've got a really good team monitoring things, and we've got a great team of ambassadors who help sort of promote the protocol and communicate what we're up to. So there's a bunch of people in there that can answer stuff, and ultimately, if you need to talk to me about something, it gets to me eventually. So happy to communicate with people and be involved.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Darius. Like what you're building. Excited to play with it myself. And until next time.
Great.
Thanks for coming by.
Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.